All right, I'm muting.
Welcome to the DeFi Standard. This is Patty XRP, and with me, as always, is
Mickey Bifrost.
very nice. And just a few reminders for everybody out there. If you have questions on the Flare network, we have a website called thedefistandard.com. Please feel free to go to that. We're kind of updating a few times a week with new information, and we'll continue to do so. Plus, there's some old blogs there and stuff that may help you get a better understanding of like FTSO or F asset rewards, like how are those exactly calculated. So definitely highly suggest you guys checking it out. Basically, it's just been us going through, the white papers and the blogs from different projects, including Flare Network and anything else that is, going to be launching on top of it that we have enough information about at this point. So it's just kind of, compiled into a briefer version of all that stuff, and then hopefully with some diagrams in the instances that we can to help you guys better understand what's coming here I would say probably within a month, right, Mickey?
Yeah, within a month. So also anything that we say is not financial advice, not tax advice, any type of
Yeah.
advice in any shape or form. All right. Just want to throw that out there for everybody. But yeah, within the next month. So pinned to the Flare Network's official Twitter for the past like 80 to 90 days has said Flare Networks will go live estimated plus or minus 2 to 4 weeks from the end of June. So that means that includes all of July, possibly. So I would think in the month of July is where we're looking for the Flare Networks to go live. And I would think that we would have at least a week or two notice in advance before that happens. And the reason why they're not picking a specific date, they don't want to put pressure on all the engineers. Now, keep in mind, this project and development of the whole Flare network has been under development for 3 to 4 years. So a week or two that way, or extended, is not a big deal in the scheme of things when you've been building something for 3 to 4 years. So we have to keep that in mind. I understand we all want our Spark tokens. We want to be able to delegate. We want to be able to make money and profit from them. I do too. But we also have to wait patiently. We don't want to rush something that could have, when it comes to launching a whole new blockchain, it's very different than launching just like a dApp, on Ethereum. Those happen very quickly. this is a whole blockchain. So these security audits have been done since 2019. They've been doing this. So we have to keep that in mind, that launching something like this is a big deal. So we just have to be patient, and it's coming. So I would say in the next 4 weeks or so.
Yeah, I definitely would think at least second half of July based on statements around the security audits being, worked on right now, and they really have to be completed for it to go live. So the Flare network's kind of dependent on those security audits, and then also like, if they do find something that they need to fix that takes more time, then that could push it farther. So obviously these things aren't set in stone, which we've seen at this point, and it's just something that we have to deal with. But hopefully we'll see it live by the end of July. I mean, I think that's what Hugo's still expecting at this point. So it's really just dependent on those security audits. Yeah.
Exactly. And if anyone hears noises in the background, I like to do these outside. I was going to do mine on my computer today, but I'm having some technical issues. But I do like doing them outside and sometimes being in a dark room. So if you hear a noise here or there, it's just a bird chirping or car passing. I'm not in the car. I'm like outside in the middle of the summer. So I do enjoy doing them like this. It just it opens up your mind, I think, to different things than being in a dark room at certain times. Patty's in his dark room over
I'm
there.
in a dark room. There's no lights on and my blinds are closed. So I did sit
You have both
outside
sides.
before this. Yeah. Cool. Well, let me get one question right off the bat. So, can we earn YFIN from a single-sided pool? And the answer is yes, but there's only one single token pool that you can use on the Flare farm, and that is going to be for YFlare, which is what anybody that holds Spark 30 days after the launch of the Flare network will be able to receive via airdrop. So, hopefully that clears it up. The rest are going to be through dual token pools. And, I think it's smart that they're doing that way because they need people to participate in these liquidity pools to ramp them up and make sure there's enough volume in them to handle larger transactions. Because if the liquidity pool doesn't have enough value in it and people are trying to make transactions through it that are higher value, you could run into slippage, which ultimately makes them not enticing for anybody to use, which will take away from, the growth of those liquidity pools and all that. So, hopefully that'll answer your question there, crypto whale, but totally understand. It's going to be the lowest yield pool also is the YFlare one. One, because they're distributing the least amount of YFIN through that pool, and then second, because the nature of it having no risk basically, since your assets aren't being used for anything, um, that means that more people are going to be enticed to be in there. So I would just
Yeah.
expect a lot lower rewards rates if you want to go that route. Just make sure you know that.
Well, it's not even necessarily rewards. That's the main way that YFIN is being distributed. So they
Yeah.
call it a fair distribution model. So to obtain that YFIN, you have to there's going to be, not, I don't want to say it's certain risk, but you have to participate in the Flare X liquidity pools to be able to get the LP token, to be able to then stake in the Flare farm to earn that YFIN. So there is some effort there to earn more of the YFIN. That YFlare pool will be available, but the majority of it is going to be 4,000 of the 11,000 YFIN is going to be distributed the first year from the yield farm. So from all those different yield farm pools that use your LP token in, that's where most of the YFIN will come from. And then once you earn YFIN, you can just put it in the governance staking pool. Now that, I guess you could call, kind of, Patty, a one-sided pool, because there's no risk. You just put it in once you get YFIN and you earn yield.
Yep. And then important to add with that, the governance staking pool is the only area that you can actually vote for governance through. And that's kind of to incentivize governance voting as well as like keep a healthy balance between assets like locked in the governance staking pool and assets that are being used throughout the different protocols in the Flare Finance ecosystem. And so let's see. I
Yeah,
see
that's that balance between utilization and storage demand.
Yep.
So that will hold that's a good thing. I think what you said right there, just to bring up, is that will hold the value of these assets. And I think that's really important because then you're staking them and they're locked in these governance pools. They're not trading on secondary markets, but they're being used for governance. So it will help support their value long term.
Yep. Absolutely. And then I do kind of want to, this is a general question that I want to hit on. So Andrew Waters asks, Mickey, I would like to know a few strategies for Flare and how to maximize yield across all platforms. So I was just going to give some thoughts and then let you go with it. Um, so obviously you're going to have the basics. Delegating your Spark vote earns you yield. Your asset doesn't have to move anywhere else, so there's no risk there. And then also the minting of F assets gets you daily Spark rewards from the F asset pools. And with that, very minimal risk as the system has a lot of security things put in place to maintain the collateral ratios of agents. Like if an agent starts is under collateralized for too long, which really isn't that long period of time, like a few minutes, or wherever they have this collateral call band where it's like a ratio that's 0.05 below the 2.5 ratio that they have, the smart contracts will start selling off their Spark collateral to purchase F assets off the open market and then use those F assets to start closing out of their position. So that's one way that like the F asset system keeps it safe. And then also if there's a redemption failure, you're paid out fully in the value of the assets that were failed to be redeemed. But that's in Spark that you get paid, which you can take to go and purchase that asset somewhere else without going through the redemption system. But on top of that, one of the things I'm really playing with is, where is YFIN able to be earned within the Flare Finance platform? And that's going to be through the Flare Mutual protocol, the Flare Loans protocol, and then Flare X, which is the liquidity pools. And those are your access to get onto Flare Farm, where ultimately the YFIN is delivered through. Now, a lot of people may be worried about impermanent loss with these liquidity pools, but that is where like 80 something percent of the YFIN is going to come from. So, like, that's where you are going to be maximizing the most yield, but it does require more paying attention on your part, as far as which way the assets you have in those pools are moving. Like, if they're moving against each other, then you're going to have some impermanent loss risk that comes in hand with that. But one thing that I'm playing around with my mind now is what if I'm not using my actual assets in these liquidity pools and rather I'm utilizing either like the Probity platform or Flare loans in order to take out loans against the assets I already have and then over collateralize them by an amount that I feel safe and in case there's a massive market move in the matter of a few days. So that would allow you to just go and you just earn yield. You use some of that yield to pay back the loan payment, which as long as you're getting like a low APY or APR on the loan, so like I'm saying like somewhere 2 to 5%, shouldn't be that difficult in the early days as the yield's much higher from these different protocols. And that way, I'm just using loaned assets to earn yield and impermanent, and I'm not risking like my OG bag of like XRP that I've minted into FXRP. I'm not missing out on any price appreciation because that's just, sitting as collateral for me to take out a loan. Now, obviously, if you don't pay your collateral or you don't pay your loan payments back, they'll take some of that collateral out to pay for it. But I think that might be easier to manage than impermanent loss. And then, I just put my assets in the liquidity pool and I don't really care if impermanent loss happens. I'm really just there to collect the fees and also the YFIN. But I'm starting to play around with that. You definitely got to like nail down the math when you enter into anything like that. But that's a way you can use composability to your advantage in earning yourself yield in different kind of ways.
Yeah, I think that's well said because those assets that you put in, say the Probity Vault or the Flare loan to borrow against, if those assets go up and they appreciate in price, then you still get that appreciation. So the borrowed assets you're then just using in these different protocols, like Patty said, to then earn the fees because it is going to be lucrative to participate in those Flare X liquidity pools. You're going to be earning fees. You're going to be earning then YFIN, and you're going to be earning, say, if you're using FXRP, you'll be earning daily Spark. So you're earning in three ways here on top of just capital appreciation. So when there's stagnant markets, like there's been for like the last month, you'll still be earning assets, multiple assets and fees while the market's just staying stagnant. So that's something to add to your like portfolio on top of just counting on capital appreciation. So you don't have to do 100% with anything. You could take a percentage, say 10%, and do this, and borrow against it, and then using liquidity pools to try and earn some YFIN. Also, I got to throw in there, Patty, is that Flare Finance is going to have these liquidity events when the network goes live, and we'll keep you updated. We don't have any details yet, but we know that there's going to be these liquidity rushes or these liquidity events when the network starts that's going to offer like boosted rewards to get the liquidity in there, and they'll pay out very high. So we don't know the details on them yet, but stay tuned. Expect that to happen. So that's something that's to be determined still, but just expect it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about that. If anybody wants to look into a like use case of these like liquidity events that have happened in the past, look into Warp Finance. That is what Crypto Frenchie referenced when he brought that up. I guess like a month now ago, when we did that Twitter Spaces call with the Doge community and Flare Finance. But this one is more of a speculative question that I'm seeing, and I kind of like it because I had some similar thoughts. So this is more for fun, Mickey. But basically, what would happen to Bitcoin price if we found out that David Schwartz was Satoshi? Or I'd throw in there Arthur Brito. But would it drop like a fly? And what would happen to the XRP price?
Oh,
So
this is a good one.
yeah, it's an interesting.
Well, one thing I would say that if we found that out, that means that they have control of that wallet, right? So whoever has control of that Bitcoin wallet that has, what is it, like 1 million or so Bitcoin in it, can utilize that Bitcoin, but it doesn't mean they have to dump it on the secondary market. That Bitcoin wallet could actually be used, say, as collateral to borrow against or to mint other type of assets. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it would just crush the price directly, because it's not like Satoshi, even if it is Brito or David Schwartz, they don't have to sell it out to fiat. That's not the ideal thing to do. I would use that value as collateral to create some other type of synthetic asset, or to borrow against it, or to issue it, or to issue Bitcoin on like the XRP ledger, for example. Why not? That wouldn't affect the price.
Maybe mint FBTC in the future.
Yeah, or mint FBTC. There you go. I mean, there are things that, I think on a media side, it might rattle the whole Bitcoin community. There's no question there. But actual use of the Bitcoin wallet that Satoshi holds, you could do things like Patty said, mint FBTC, or you could issue it on the XRP ledger through some kind of gateway. Yeah, it would have to be trusted. But there's different things you could do with that. So there might be a reason why whoever Satoshi is holding that for other reasons, not just to sell to fiat.
Yeah, and I'll add to that on the last part of your question, Joshua, I would imagine the XRP price would move up if anybody that had anything to do with building the XRP ledger had, is part of whoever Satoshi is, like if it's a group or an individual, I think that would just be bullish. But yeah. So let's see. Okay, so John Tocho said, shouldn't we see Bifrost beta wallet as a precursor to launch? I can't say with 100% certainty, but they have communicated over Twitter that is what they are trying to do. They would like to get a beta out there before the Flare network launches, and give us an opportunity to play around with that, and then also see, like, I would hope during that beta we could see how we would mint F assets through that wallet application, and then also see what the delegation looks like. So,
well, there could be a beta, like, for example, we might see a beta that just allows for the delegating of the votes and stuff. And then in that period between when the Flare network launches, after that, and between when F asset minting goes live 6 to 8 weeks later, we could see a beta in between there too for the minting of F assets. We don't necessarily have to have the full beta before the network goes live. So
yeah, it's a good point. Since the F asset system's like 6 to 8 weeks after launch is the expected time for that to go live. I mean, I would just like to be able to, like, if in the beta I could just go ahead and set up my wallet and get that good to go, that would be awesome.
Yeah, another timeline thing would be the signal providers testnet for the Flare network. We've heard that they haven't done that yet, but that's probably right around the corner. So once we hear the signal providers are doing their testnet and finishing up and wrapping up there, which should be in the next couple of weeks, then we should start to see the Flare network live. I would think we would get at least a 2-week notice, or at least 10 to 14 days before the airdrop.
Yeah, absolutely. And then let's see. Okay, so this is an interesting question from Zero Latency Manifestation. Um, he says, I have a question about Flare Finance. Could the Kakibo, and Kakibo is the new name. I know we were trying to say it yesterday, and I think I pronounced it wrong. So it's Kakeido. Um, that's like the new name for APY Cloud. And then he asks if that could become a master node of XDC, Gala, Pack, etc to earn extra income for itself. So yeah, I
Mm,
see what you're going about here. Basically, the way it will work is the I guess Kakibo or APY Cloud, formerly known as, that will be collecting fees from all the different protocols on Flare Finance, which XDC, Gala, and Pack are all being used like either for loans or maybe to mint a stable coin or in a liquidity pool. So fees will be paid in those assets just depending on how they are used. And then the Kakibo, this is gonna be I don't know how to say this now. So much easier to say APY Cloud, but that will be taking in those fees and then redistributing them to the people that are in the governance staking pool. So hopefully
yeah,
that
but
will answer it.
mhm. I don't know if it's necessarily going to use those master nodes though, because this is something that's Flare Finance specific. So it's going to take the Flare Finance, those 6 protocols, and pull in fees from there. I'm not sure if
Yeah, I
he's
don't think it'll
asking
be a
like if
node
it's
on their
those nodes.
networks.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think so. But more details to come on that. I think that's going to kind of be like an internal thing that'll be managed by Flare Finance governance. So everyone who holds YFlare or YFIN and is staking it in the governance pool, you'll decide on a lot of the decisions and the parameters there. So remember, they're going to have their own governance too. It's not like just some person is going to decide these things. The Flare Finance will have their own governance to decide these different parameters of how much will be pulled in here, how much will be pulled in there, how much YFlare are we going to release to rewards? Because 40 million of the 110 YFlare are being airdropped. Another 40 million are being kept in the APY cloud or the Kibo, and then is distributed as that yield or rewards. So I think that I like the idea of a governance staking pool because it really does hold the value of those assets once you have them. So if you could be utilizing them in the Flare Finance ecosystem, there's not too much to do with YFIN. I mean, I guess you could just put it in a liquidity pool and really can't do anything in the Flare farm with it and just on the Flare loans, right?
Yeah.
So it's mostly in the governance staking pool. So I think YFIN, it's going to take a little effort to get, and there might be a little more risk on the impermanent loss side to get it. But once you do, I think if Flare Finance overall is successful, if YFIN's value, it will show in YFIN's value, and with a low token supply and a use of governance staking.
I mean, if you just go based on the supply and then compare it to like maybe the top 10 DeFi tokens out there, so we're talking like like Yearn Finance, Compound, DAI, like those
Like,
different ones, Aave, it's not impossible for YFIN to be worth $100,000 if you just base it off their market caps as well. So that's kind of like will it get there? I don't really know. It's like, is Flare Finance and Flare Network going to be super successful? I would imagine if Flare Network's doing well, that Flare Finance would too, by extension, being like a huge DeFi platform. Because I mean, like a lot of these Ethereum projects that have popped up, they're like, a sixth of what Flare Finance is. But Flare Finance is like combining a bunch of different components of DeFi that normally launch individually on Ethereum all into one and like composable with their APY, Kakibo cloud. So we'll have to see, but I definitely, if you believe in Flare, I think it's a decent
I
bet.
bet I second that. I think it's really huge that they're putting 6 protocols together
Yeah.
with just 2 tokens, where it's typically one governance token with one protocol. And there's still going to be other protocols, I think, that will come along that will be composable with it afterwards. So starting out with that foundation of 6, they really have an advantage to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see, let's say,
Let's cover some of the misinformation that was going around so we could clarify here.
okay, cool.
So
Yeah, you touched
there's
on
going
it.
to be just so everyone knows, there was an article put out by, I don't know if it was Decrypt or some media that was incorrect. There will be no airdrop to Litecoin holders. Litecoin holders will have their own rewards pool on Flare. That's what's unique since Litecoin was second. They have 5 billion Spark in their own pool. So anyone who mints FLTC will receive rewards from that pool. More information to come. Now, there's a blog on the Flare website from like February regarding this. So that information was released months ago. I saw some of that misinformation going around today. And then the second thing is Flare Networks is not, and I repeat, not a fork of the XRP ledger. It's a utility fork, but it is not a fork of the code. It has nothing to do with XRP ledger's code. It's completely separate. It's its unique blockchain. It uses Ethereum virtual machine and smart contracts and accounts. It uses Avalanche consensus with federated Byzantine agreement, but it has nothing. It's nothing of a fork to the code at all.
It's actually more similar to Stellar than the XRP ledger. So just something to keep in mind, because Stellar is an advanced version of what the XRP ledger originally was, or tried to advance on it. So yeah, definitely take that into account.
Yeah, but I think it's even more like Ethereum because it used the Ethereum virtual machine.
Well, and Avalanche,
and Avalanche's consensus. They're using Avalanche in the code a lot. That's out there right now with the state connector system. It uses Hedera Hashgraph's virtual voting machine, but it's Sybil resistant. So it's kind of like a Frankenstein of all the best technologies out there. But it's definitely not a fork of the XRP ledger code. Like there's nothing that supports that.
Yeah, and then I see Andrew Waters said, can Ethereum Classic become an F asset? Yeah, absolutely can. If we vote it on via, governance vote, it just has to be proposed by somebody that's a Spark holder. There's a fee associated with proposals. I don't know how high it is off the top of my head. I don't even remember if I've read that the fee's been outlined yet. But I actually think like some of the older blockchains, like Ethereum Classic, Bitcoin Cash, things like that have just been around for a while.
Zcash.
Those are I think are great options to bring on. Just when there's not as much development going on their network as some of the hotter, newer assets out there.
Yeah, let's just remember what Flare Networks was built to do. The prime, right on the front page of the Flare website is unlocking value. So you have all this trapped value that's really doing nothing. It's just sitting there in cold wallets. It's not being used for anything. So Flare allows it to unlock this value. So we have these legacy type blockchains like Zcash, Bitcoin Cash, XRP Ledger, Stellar, who don't have smart contracts natively. So we'll have that wave, but then we'll also have a wave of like the Algorands, the possible Cardanos, the possible Cosmoses that don't have Ethereum smart contracts built into them. So those would likely be another wave of F assets because they have their own smart contracting language, but they're missing the Ethereum virtual machine smart contracting. So that's why Algo is proposed as the next one once the network goes live, because it's missing that and it would add on to it.
Absolutely. And I guess to go along with this is a good time to point out, since we were having this discussion in our Patreon Telegram group earlier around the ability of the Flare network to connect to these other blockchains without needing anything from the other blockchain. In fact, the other blockchain doesn't even have to know that the Flare network exists. So it makes it really easy to integrate Flare with other blockchains and then bring value onto Flare. Well, let's say there's something like Cosmos or Polkadot out there that maybe require a little more effort to bridge assets over. Well, they could just bridge with the Flare network and then get access to all these different blockchains and the assets coming from them via the Flare network. So it's almost like, an interoperable network for propagating assets onto different networks too. So I just find that concept interesting, and Polkadot and Cosmos were specifically mentioned in the Flare network white paper for that being a potential use case. So I was working today on a state connector system blog, which I'm hoping to put out tonight. I'm getting together a nice diagram to kind of visualize what it would look like to go along with it, but I'll tweet that out so you guys can learn a little more about the state connector. A lot of the stuff in their documents is really technical things that you're just kind of what are they talking about? But try and broke it down in a good enough way for people to get the idea.
It's a powerful piece of technology, that state connector, because basically it allows the Flare network to digest the whole state, which means it digests all the data. So it knows which account has how much XRP at every time. it knows exactly everything that's going on in the XRP ledger at all times in real time, every few ledger closings. Same with the Litecoin blockchain. The Flare network digests all this data because it has a unique node list running on the XRP ledger, running on the Litecoin blockchain of miners and Flare network validators that connects back to a validator set on the Flare network. So that infrastructure right there is what they've been working on for the past, couple of years, is perfecting that. And that's something that has not been done yet. So this whole state connector thing is a brand new breakthrough technology.
Absolutely. And so bunch of good questions came in, Mickey. So let's go. Okay, this one I saw is really relevant to what we were just talking. So Andrew said, currently there are 4 F assets to compete for the rewards pool. If governance allows more assets, will they reduce our
3.
yield? Well, okay, yeah. So there's 3 assets competing for the general F asset rewards pool, and then Litecoin has its own rewards pool. Um, the estimated difference between those is 20 billion Spark going to the general rewards pool and 5 billion going to the Litecoin rewards pool. But to finish off with this question, so if governance allows more assets, will they reduce our yield? As there will be more people competing for the same amount of Spark. So yeah, this is dependent on how you're going to measure your yield. If you're measuring your yield solely in Spark tokens, then yes, it would decrease. But if there's more F assets brought onto the Flare network to compensate for that decrease in Spark token yield you're getting, that raises the USD value of Spark, well, then maybe the yield would become higher in a US dollar value like connotation. So it's kind of dependent. You have 2 forces working against each other there. Ultimately, the way I see this, like, I want to earn as much Spark tokens as I can in the first few months after launch. And then after that, I'm just like, let's bring on as many F assets as we can, because that's what's going to push the price of Spark up, is more Spark being locked up to support the, addition of F assets onto the network. And Mickey, I'll pass over to you if you have thoughts there.
Yeah, because 2.5 times the value
Yeah.
of each F asset that comes on. So say just one Litecoin comes on, 2.5 times that value is going to have to be locked up in Spark. So he's right. Patty's really right about those 2 forces. So you have this force locking up Spark, which is decreasing the supply, right? And bringing over these F assets. And yes, it's cutting into the general rewards pool of how much it's distributed to. You have a whole new asset now and a community coming in. But that should raise the Spark's value. So even if you're getting less Spark per day, you're going to get equal or more USD value. So I think that's part of this whole flywheel here and market mechanism design. So it's designed to balance out. So as more communities come on, it organically will raise the price because you're pulling Spark into its use case, which is as collateral. And then the rewards pool, those Spark will go up in value, is how it should operate.
Yep. Yep. So I mean, obviously nothing
And
works like
last
perfect with
thing.
math, but yeah, in general over time.
So also we as a governance body and as citizens of the Flare network, there's a set percentage that will be released per day. We don't know if it's 0.2%, 0.1%, but we as a governance body will determine that rate. So say if the Spark price didn't go up enough, right? And the rewards are just too low, we could raise the percentage to like 0.3% coming out every day to counterbalance that if we had to. So that's why governance here allows for the flexibility to be able to adjust on the fly.
Absolutely. That's a good point that you brought up there. And it's really like, how do we use these rewards to get the network to a point where it can start running on its own? At least for me, over time, we're going to see a lot of different dApps built on top of the Flare network, if it's successful and long standing. So, like these boosted rewards, which is essentially just distributing the Spark token out to people utilizing the network. That's like to just entice people to bring more value on. And one interesting thing I saw was, if you're a person that owns Spark and you hold it, somebody that mints an F asset is actually doing more for the price than a person holding like Spark. You know what I mean? Basically, like, because 2.5 times the value of Spark has to be locked up as collateral, that does more than just holding like a token. You know what I mean? So I just found that
Yeah,
interesting
good
way to
point right
think of
there.
it. Yeah, I don't
Hmm.
remember who said that. Somebody did it maybe in the Telegram proposals group for Flare,
Hmm.
but yeah, I just found that it's a very
That's a
good
great
point.
point.
Yeah.
But that's why you're getting rewarded in Spark daily for doing that.
Yeah.
So let's see if it's generally, say it's just hypothetically, we don't know exactly what the percentage is going to be, but say it's 0.2% of 20 billion, that's 40 million per day Spark being distributed out. And now that's part of the total supply. That's not inflation on top of the 100 billion. That's included within the FTSO rewards. 28 million per day are being distributed out to those who delegate the votes and have accurate price feeds. That is the inflation rate. So just to understand there, this is transferring the value into the hands of those who are helping the network, benefiting the network, and have a stake in the network. So it's getting rid of those weak hands. Nobody's getting rewarded for selling on exchanges or for trading. The people who are participating, minting F assets, delegating your votes, you're going to earn the rewards, which means it's going to transfer the value over time, will be in the hands of those who are the best participants. And that will show after like 6 months to a year, even 6 months out, I think will make a difference. So that's why I don't want to get too caught up in supply and inflation, because there's other factors here that are more important and more relevant and will impact the network. Because that's good, giving value to those that are participating. Then they're going to participate more, and they're not going to be as likely to sell on the open market.
Yeah, at least dump all of it. I mean, all of us are going to have to sell every now and then, like, whether to pay bills or pay some taxes from like income, basically. And that's like, if you earn, you know, some kind of value from participating in a DeFi product, like technically that's income. But it's not like you have to sell everything to cover that. But I do want to add, so I think community governance node, that what Mickey just said helped answer your question, which was how effective do you feel whales will be in steering the direction of decentralized financial networks in general? And obviously that's going to be very dependent on how the network's set up. Personally, like with Flare, they had the whole whale cap, so nobody received over 1 billion Spark in their airdrop, and we know there's going to be 100 billion tokens originally minted to be released. So that's 1/100th is or whatever, a 100th of the total supply would be in with one person max, minus the Flare limited team, which is getting 25% of the total minted assets. And obviously they're the creators, so they can do with what they want. I mean, we all know that Ripple had, over 50 billion at one point of the XRP, so I'd say it's significantly less than that. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the whales are not going to be a factor in the way Flare Network is designed. If anything, it's going to make a bunch of mini whales who are the foundation of the Flare network, who are the
Yeah.
best participants. So we're not going to have these outside entities swinging the price, because they're never going to be able to obtain Spark at a rate unless they're participating in the network. So if you're just trying to move markets on exchanges, you're not earning any Spark for doing that. So those people who keep participating are going to stack and stack and stack, and they're going to become mini whales who are going to be part of the governance, and they're going to manage the system. So you kind of eliminate the prospect of those outside whales manipulating the market, and actually the on-chain effects are more relevant. So this is kind of a different setup than, say, Bitcoin or XRP Ledger is because to earn more, you have to actually participate. You can't just be trying to manipulate the market on exchanges.
Yep. Excellent, Mickey. And then BSEC, good to see you in here, man. He was asking, when you bring FXRP to Flare Finance to enter into a two-sided liquidity pool, are you able to use Flare loans to get the YUSD, or does Flare Finance only split 50-50 of FXRP value to get YUSD? So with this, Brian, basically you have to come with 50-50 value on your own. So you would need to go and source the stable coin that the FXRP is trading against in that instance. So like, let's say you're going to put 100 FXRP in there and that's all you have, well, you'd have to also get the same amount of value in YUSD to match that. So you may need to sell some of that FXRP to get YUSD to participate in the liquidity pool. So hopefully that'll answer that. That's definitely a good question. And then let's
Yeah,
see
and
what,
that's
yeah.
how, well, just to explain how that works is you'll use the backside of that liquidity pool to swap to even out your FXRP and your YUSD. So you'll use the liquidity pool for swapping just to level it out if you want it to have the even amount. So that's where those fees, everyone's always going to be using the swapping feature because it just allows you to even it out. And there's going to be a new beta coming from Flare Finance. So I think that's going to be important to test out in the meantime until Flare Network officially goes live. We'll have this beta with a full new UI interface, and we'll be able to test it really in an easy way. And the new Flare Finance beta is going to be a one-click faucet. There's not going to be those headaches like you had in the past.
Yep. And then let's see, you got some questions around yield. Crypto onesie, are we able to mint F assets day one? No, that'll be 6 to 8 weeks tentatively after launch. And just so everybody understands, it's because they want to make sure the spark price volatility, starts coming a little more normal, as there's probably going to be a lot of ups and downs, I'd imagine, in the first few weeks with a airdrop of this size. Like this is one of the largest, if not the largest airdrops that's ever taken place in crypto. So it's definitely new and they don't want to rush things with the F asset system. Additionally, it'll give signal providers time to, adjust how they're pulling data off the internet and bringing that to the FTSO. So getting all that settled out. So those are both really key components of minting F assets. And that's why there is a wait. So, while it's like, oh, we don't get as much spark like in the beginning, since it's not live, I guess like in the long term, it's probably better for us and is going to, reduce any likelihoods of some like catastrophic event taking place. So I'm
Yeah.
excited about that. And
And
then,
this is
yeah,
really the biggest airdrop ever because you can't consider that's a fork. Bitcoin Cash was a fork. This isn't a fork of anything being distributed. This is a whole new network with a fair distribution starting at zero. Where Bitcoin Cash, when it forked, it had a valuation of it because it was splitting the network of Bitcoin. This is coming with a zero valuation when it gets dropped to you. So there is a key difference here on the airdrops. Overall, if you want to just call it an airdrop category, okay, Bitcoin Cash technically did an airdrop, but it was very different setup than this is. This is not a fork of the XRP ledger.
awesome. Another good question I see. So, what's an LP token? An LP is for liquidity pool. Basically, when you put your assets into a liquidity pool, you get liquidity pool tokens that represents the value that you hold in that liquidity pool, and then you're able to use that LP token in other areas of like, Flare Finance. So one thing that you have to
Yeah,
do, you use your LP tokens to get YFIN from Flare Farm. So like once you provide your assets to the liquidity pool, then you'll go to like another page on the Flare Finance like web browser or whatever they're going to use for that, and then you would stake your LP tokens in the corresponding Flare Farm pool, and then that's how you would get YFIN delivered to you. Also, there are different like protocols on Ethereum that are using LP tokens for collateral. So like it's possible that you could in the future, I don't know if Flare Finance will have this like right out the get go, but you could have your assets staked in a liquidity pool, and then you could take your LP tokens and use those as collateral to take out a loan or something like that. So that just adds more options and flexibility to what you can do, and also how you can hedge your assets depending on what kind of products you're using. So I really hope that's something we see more of in the future. Um, Cool. Well, we're at 3:45, Mickey. Is there I think one thing we forgot to
six
brought
more
up. Well, I wanted
questions.
to address the Trustline and Flare
Okay.
Finance stuff. So, Crypto Frenchie
Ah,
and Crypto
yes.
Frenchie is like the head guy for Flare Finance, and also Matt Rosenden, who's the head guy for Trustline. We're kind of talking about stuff in one of the Flare Telegram groups, and I'm going to read from Crypto Frenchie first, and then we'll go into Rosenden. But he basically said, remember, we are building on an expanding test network, and this is all in regards to the beta, and working as close to the main network team as possible, which is the Flare team. There's a lot coming to be showcased in this upcoming beta, including a few awesome benefits of the network and platform that the team may have or will disclose soon. Additionally, most UX UI requests submitted by people in our previous beta. So UX and UI is for like user experience or user interface. Those are the acronyms for that. If you hear that, we completed our intermediary audit by trail of bits last month with no critical or major issues in our contracts and mostly informational comments. This will be released during our beta. So there we go. We'll get our first security audit during the Flare Finance beta. We'll get to read through that. If you guys saw the Bifrost wallet overview that we did from their security audit, it'll be a little different, as it's like, smart contracts and a DeFi platform rather than custodying of like private keys and things like that. And then he also says we are also undergoing our secondary audit by CerTic as we speak. And based on their preliminary report, we have no critical or major issues again that pose a risk of loss of funds. And again, mostly informational issues as our documentation portal is constantly updated as we build. Our final audit will be conducted by Halborn after our beta program and pre-launch, and will follow a month of security advisory services that monitors our liquidity event and product launches to help mitigate as much risk as possible. We can't promise 100% security, but we can promise 110% effort. Obviously, nobody can promise you 100% security because things do happen. Just want to throw that out there. And also with that security advisory services, so they're hiring a firm basically to watch the network and make sure, like, basically be preventative to anything that could happen in the first month as it gets up and running. So that's really cool that they're going to have that. And we also, like, as YFlare or YFIN holders, will have the option to continue to pay for that if we feel it's needed beyond 1 month via governance voting and proposals. So, Mickey, I'll let you touch on all that from Flare Finance, and then we can talk about Trustline.
Sure. Yeah, it's great to see that there's be a security as a service once the network goes live. But it's good to see 3 different smart contract audits, and things might not be perfect. There could be little hiccups here and there, but these protocols are based off proven protocols already, just kind of tweaked for the Flare network. So there's nothing drastically new. The APY cloud is, though. That's something pretty powerful. But we're also got to remember here, we're going to be getting an airdrop of YFlare. So just to do an overview of that, you covered everything else pretty good there. So a month after the Flare network goes live, they will take a snapshot of your Spark. So no matter where your Spark is, if it's delegated to a signal provider, if it's in a probity vault, if it's in a liquidity pool, it doesn't matter where it is. It's connected back to your account because it's just a smart contract. So you will get a snapshot of that, and then you will receive DFlare, and you'll have 7 to 10 days to swap that to YFlare and go through a little terms and conditions and a few tutorial videos to get your actual YFlare that you could actually use on the network then. So that will happen 1 month after the network goes live, that snapshot. So that's why we want to accumulate as much Spark as possible early on. And the best way to do that is to delegate your votes. It's going to be very simple. You just hit delegate. It's going to be right there in your either Decent wallet, your Bifrost, or your MetaMask. You'll be able to do this. I don't think it's going to be supported by Ledger Live, not at least in the first month. So I would prepare for that. Decent and Bifrost seem to be the most supportive of the Flare network and probably have the best functionality to be able to use. We got to see which exchanges will be supporting Flare Finance too, because not all the exchanges that support Flare will support Flare Finance. And in general, I would start to just get in the mindset away from using exchanges with DeFi. Just understand that if you're going to maximize the functionality and the usability, you're not going to be able to do it from an exchange. You're going to want to probably do it in these early days from like your Bifrost or Decent will be the best. And if you're really familiar with MetaMask and you're good with using it, then maybe you want to use a Ledger Nano with MetaMask. But there's different options for different people. But I would just get away from expecting your exchange to offer everything. It's doubtful that will happen.
Cool. And then we can touch on what Matt Rosenden had to say as well. So he said they were asking about his audits, which haven't begun yet. But he said audits are expensive, so I'm busy raising VC money Honestly, it's not that hard to get good auditors if you can pay for it. So he's working on doing that. With that said, I have a good friend who runs QuantStamp. They're one of the first auditors in the space. I was also thinking Trail of Bits and Consensus. I hear Certic is good as well. Either way, we'll have the industry standard top notch teams auditing our code. We will also be releasing an official technical white paper and update our documentation to make it easier to read for the non technical folk. And then he goes, I know crypto is a global phenomena, but me and my co-founder are a Silicon Valley based team bringing our tech and startup experience to make a product that will knock your socks off. And then he said, we're quite differentiated from Flare Finance, but I would still like to see how the ecosystems can interoperate better. So I think that's cool. But yeah, so that, I mean, Trustline definitely has always been a little more behind Flare Finance. And I never really expected them to be live for Flare Network launch. I don't know if that will happen. I kind of doubt it,
I
but
doubt it.
yeah.
They're going to
So
do their security audits after. And let me just throw in there with Trustline what they're going to do, just so everyone can understand ecosystem dynamic a little here. Understand that Probity DAO is the vault. It's like a decentralized crypto bank on the Flare network. And that's a native Flare decentralized application. It will be governed by the TCN holders. It's the governance token for Probity Vault. And that allows you to put your collateral in, and you could borrow and receive RA, or you could lend RA out and earn interest. But there's also going to be eventually a Trustline mobile app. And this is really interesting because it's going to be like Coinbase.com. It'll have a fiat on and off ramp, which I think is really cool. Now, that'll be separate from like the Probity Vault. I mean, it might connect to it, but it's going to allow us to connect our real identities, our bank accounts, and give us that fiat on and off ramp without having to use an exchange or use Coinbase. So I think that's awesome going forward to see that those floodgates open from the traditional market without having to go through an exchange. And this is why I keep saying the exchange model is on the decline. There's going to be less and less focus on these walled garden exchanges that are just trying to keep everyone in their own walled garden, and more connection to these decentralized applications and these on-chain capabilities for the users. You know, Coinbase wants to just lock everyone in their walled garden and just look at the price charts. And that's not where this market is going. It's not where the industry is going. The industry is heading into DeFi applications and other types of applications that actually built on their native networks, either in layer 1, layer 2, side chains. However, they're not going to take place on legacy databases keeping track of accounts in a proprietary, software. That's what Coinbase does. And that's not healthy, I think, for the industry moving forward. It's actually one of the inhibitors that's holding back institutional adoption, because institutions are not going to come in and just open Coinbase accounts. That's not where this is going in the future. So things like Polysign and their escrow service are going to be a big part of bringing institutional money in, but also helping the retail investors be able to actually utilize all these products. So maybe one day we could have hybrid custodial wallets where we'll be able to use DeFi, but we have the insurance and comfort and safety of a custodial wallet. So I think we'll see that more in the future. That's where SBI's wallet is going with the multi-party computation, where it removes the actual private key. So you don't even have to worry about storing the private key because it doesn't even exist. So just be on the lookout for the future. One thing that's guaranteed in this market is change. That's the only thing that's guaranteed. Expected to change over the next few years.
yeah, I think that's a good point to leave off with, Mickey. Is there anything else you want to touch on, or?
Yeah, not everything is laid out on a plan and easy to put in like a little bucket and say like, oh, this is how this is going to happen. This is how this is going to happen. That's why this has to happen like this. There's, I'm not going to go in detail about anything, but it's not known. It's impossible to know exactly how everything turns out. And you kind of just got to move with the punches. As the market changes and evolves, you just got to be there. Nobody's able to know exactly how it's going to go down specifically. And I know we all want that. And that gives us a sense of comfort, but it's not reality. And if you would have looked in 2018 to now on how the market would have developed, you would have never been able to predict all this DeFi stuff, and we get a whole new Flare network and airdrop tokens. So what's going to happen in 2 years from now? A bunch of things that you can't predict right now. So you just have to be on the lookout and understand that change is inevitable for this market and this technology moving so rapidly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just throw in, don't be afraid to look at different things just because, things are changing over time. So, I think that's a great part to leave out off at. And I'll just throw out there, everyone, if you didn't know, we have a Patreon where we talk about this stuff every day, and our Telegram and Discord group provide like spreadsheets that we make, and also just like answer any kind of questions that people would like to know. You guys are more than welcome to join, but no worries if not. We'll still be
Yeah.
here on YouTube. So this
Yeah, and
is.
we
Oh yeah,
do
go ahead.
2 Zoom calls.
Yeah,
We do 2 Zoom calls every week for the higher tiers, which are 1 to 2 hours every Wednesday night and Sunday afternoon.
yeah, perfect. Cool. Well, this is the DeFi Standard. Thanks for tuning in, and I'm Patty XRP,
And I'm Mickey B. Fresh.
and we are out. See you guys.